Okay, we're back again for more Warhammer 40k. Today, in this episode, Bricky will be explaining to us the Eldar. Pretty excited about this one. I always thought of them more as like a ninja. Like my buddy who, when he first showed me War like Dawn of War, he kind of explained to me that, hey, these they throw shurikens or they have rifles that shoot that, and they're think of them more like a ninja or samurai set than you would anything else. So that's kind of how I resonate with them. I could be completely wrong, and he could have been just blowing smoke up my ass at that point. That's kind of what I remember the whole thing as. I was gonna try it. I've been trying to play the game a little bit on stream. It doesn't look great, just because of the limitations of that particular game. It was made in 2004, so there's no widescreen settings or anything, but there's mods. I need to find the mods. I haven't found them yet, so it's on my to-do list. But I'm excited to keep playing those. But that's what I remember of this particular set. So without further ado here, let's get into Bricky telling us about the Eldar.
So let's talk about the Eldar, or also known as the Eldari, which are a super hyper specialized and very technologically advanced race of, well, elf people. They were as well responsible for the creation of Slaneesh, the newest demon god. How'd they do that? Debauchery on a world-ending scale. See, back in the day, it was just Khorne, Tzeentch, and Nurgle. And the Eldar are very, very ancient. Millions of years. These Eldar, however, have a bit of a sensory problem. You know, every kind of pain or feeling that you have is a little bit amplified compared to the normal. However, with Eldar, as their race advanced so excessively, and they became so self-reliant, and everything became so easy, there was no requirement for food production anymore, there was no shortages, everything was basically done. Everyone was so comfortable, and that comfort breeded this weird sedation, and that sedation breeded the requirement for more and more debauchery.
Debauchery!
Debauchery! Debauchery!
When everything you have can be so easily acquired, you will end up down this road of pure debauchery. All of the senses the Eldar had that were so powerful, things like feeling, happiness, sadness, and just evil and good, all needed to be satisfied and satiated. And the desire to satiate these senses grew more and more with worse and worse debauchery. It started off with things like sex and drugs becoming so much more rampant because of these.
I just noticed his little elf feet there. Hilarious. So, if you're an Eldar being ancient, and everything feels way better for you, I guess, in that particular life, right? So you need to amplify everything in order to feel things. So the sex thing, the drugs thing, violence, I can only assume is going to be important in that. This is all stuff I didn't know. I mean, that's a lot of debauchery, especially if you're like ancient. That race has been doing that forever. That's crazy. That's crazy.
To the first things you generally turn to when requirements for living are so easily accessible. It would get to the point that made Sander Cohen in BioShock look sane. All right, this is the kind of debauchery it led to. It was constantly satisfying and satiating these sexual and sadistic or masochistic fantasies that only elevated and elevated, and this was species-wide. People started going down darker, more depraved, and more violent paths as time went on. However, some people didn't entirely take to that. Some of the Eldar were looking at this depraved species that they had become and said, no thanks for me, dog, I'm good. And they bailed. These are the Craftworld Eldar. They left on these giant continent-sized starships called Craftworlds. They believed in learning the old ways of the Eldar and pushing away from this depravity and debauchery and going back to their main roots. And so they would segment themselves on these giant craft worlds far in the outer reaches of space. They even had this thing called the Webway. Remember what we mentioned about warp travel with the Imperium? Well, the Eldar had something way safer called a Webway. And the Eldar Webway is actually like a pocket dimension kind of thing. And in that pocket dimension, there were also more horrible, depraved groups and clans that would spend their time in there. And if you imagine the debauchery was bad already, these were debauchery X10. So all of this continued, and it bloated until Slaneesh just burst forth. All that emotion, all that mental, well, thought processes, I suppose, all of this in such a condensed space. Don't forget, this is all being shot, all their souls as well, into the warp. All of this depravity right into the warp. So what happened? Boom! Slaneesh was birthed and killed off 90% of the entire Eldar population. Untold trillions had their souls ripped from their bodies and their actual fleshy bodies devoured by Slaneesh demons. The entirety of the Eldar race was eaten alive and their souls consumed to the Prince of Pleasure. All of them got fucked up. It was so bad that it literally ripped a warp hole into the fabric of the materium called the Eye of Terror. That's literally this like quasi horrifying gateway portal from the materium and the immaterium right next to Cadia. And it is horrifying. So this Slaneesh, also known as She Who Thirsts by the Eldar, slaughtered the entire population except for a couple. Those in the craft worlds were actually not affected by this.
No.
As they were so far in the reaches of the galaxy, that crazy crack, that birth of Slaneesh only affected the ones in the center. So these Craftworld Eldar were able to escape, but Slaneesh got their sights on them. Every time an Eldar will die, their soul doesn't just pass into the warp naturally. It goes straight to Slaneesh, Craftworld or not. What about those people in the Webway? Well, imagine that giant birth happening, but they were only able to just barely get a grasp onto you. Slaneesh was just barely able to hold on. These people are the Dark Eldar, or also known as the Drukhari. The Eldar population right now is so massively small. It is minuscule compared to any of the other most of the other populations in the universe. The Eldar are consistently having issues trying to get their population up because as their souls are constantly being hungered by from Slaneesh, they realize their entire species is doomed. And they understand it very well. Since the time of the fall, our race...
So every Eldar who's ever existed, when they die, like their soul goes straight to Slaneesh. There's no way around that. It's very interesting. So that Slaneesh is... everybody is caught up in that web. So every time you kill one, that's where they go. Make Slaneesh more powerful. That's interesting in itself. Just that it seems to be scaling up. He said something, Ricky said something about everything is overpowered in this universe and like to a scale that's unimaginable. So the power creep inside this universe must be just immense. That must also be like a power fantasy for all the players, right? You're going to pick something, you're going to make them super powerful, but then there's always something bigger or better or stronger that's going to cancel something out. That's cool. Interesting, and it's always like a game of chance. Very interesting to me.
race has been haunted by what we, in our reckless pursuit of hedonistic indulgence, gave birth to. Though our dreams once overturned worlds and quenched suns, we are now but fitful shadows clinging to the edge of existence. All the stars in the sky cannot blot out the hateful glare of the red moon's eye. The birthing place of the great enemy pulses with all the malice of a demon that is dreaming, casting its shadow over all we have ever done and all we ever shall. Every twisted strand of fate and casting of the runes leads me to this time, to this place, and it is clear that the final battle awaits me at the ancient Crone worlds, a conflict the likes of which has not been seen since the Monkai warred amongst themselves and their corpse of a seer fell to his traitorous son. Is coming, and all my steps lead towards it, no matter that I walk other paths. I see the stars stained red with the blood of the Monkai, and though their wars do not concern me, I would gladly let them destroy one another. I know that to avoid this fight is to condemn my race to inevitable doom, and though all I see is darkness, I know that I will not flinch from my destiny.
That's metal as hell right there, that whole thing.
And now let's talk about cute plastic models.
Bro, I'm straight up not having a good time.
The first playable race we have for the Eldar are the Craftworld Eldar and living in those Craftworld starships I mentioned earlier. And each of them have their own kind of craft world, almost like a Space Marine Legion. Each craft world is in itself its own special kind of group. And the Eldar themselves are very fast and rely a lot on trickery. They are squishy, a bit weak, but they're very in tune as psychers. Tons of psychers across the entire Eldar population, and their weaponry and abilities are fast and extremely hard hitting, but of course rather fragile. Understanding an Eldar,
I remember that from the game too. Like you can create a bunch of them. They're not like quick, but they are very accurate in their shots. They hit hard, but yeah, you could take them out really, really fast because they are very squishy. They're not like the orcs where it takes a lot to. And this is me talking about Dawn of War because that's my experience so far. Pretty much they could hit hard, but the second you got your armies on them, almost done for. It's pretty. If I remember right, not. Where was I going with that? Cut this, Matt. Anyway, they're very squishy in the game, so it makes sense. I did see like a kind of a retrospective on Dawn of War, and the guy was saying that game is very accurate to like the tabletop, just because of how it was set up and everything. I think that must be why I like it so much. Not that it's like the tabletop, not like it is a direct replacement for the tabletop, but it is an enjoyable little thing that's very similar to how the tabletop acts, if that makes sense.
Eldar's brain is an exercise in futility. They are all over the place in confusion and trickery on a whole galactic scale. They fight weird, they think weirder, and Eldar, in their own right, really rely on this to keep their species alive. They need to think about deception and the strangeness of what they do if they truly want to not be immediately murdered and slaughtered wholesale thanks to their entirely small population. However, I must say that it seems like their population is getting slightly better. These craft worlds hold millions upon millions of people. And as they continually, reproduce and have their craft worlds expand, losing a few people in battle, while hurts a lot, they aren't really losing what's extremely precious to them. It's not like every single death means the death of their species. It seems like they're kind of on the upturn a little bit. They're still a doomed race being sucked into Slaneesh every time someone dies, but they are definitely doing a little bit better than they were before. Eldar are fast, cunning, and what they don't make up for in tankiness, they make up for in extremely advanced weaponry. They also call humans Monkai, which is something I mentioned earlier. That is a derogatory slur for humans in the Warhammer world. Why is it called Monkai? Well, it's because you can't, in your game, call people monkeys.
Sounds a little racist if you were to do that.
On the tabletop, exactly what I said. Not very tanky, generally pretty squishy, hit like trucks, and move at Mach 5. Fast, hit hard, die fast. Exactly how it sounds. They've been good for a very long time, too. We bring only death and leave only carry-on. It is a message even a human can understand.
Short,
Eldar.
sweet, to the point.
Drukhari. Let's talk about the Dark Eldar.
On today's episode of How Fucked Up Is Fucked Up. That's fucked up.
So those people I mentioned in the
good.
webway, in the super deranged cults and the depraved people of the Eldar, in the webway, they didn't quite get a hold onto them. Slaneesh like has them, but it has them on like by the pinky finger. And they're slowly being consumed by Slaneesh, but they found out they can stave her off by doing Slaneesh things. The Dark Eldar are by far the worst, most horrifying, disgusting, depraved, and brutal race in all of Warhammer 40k. These are entirely a group of people whose full purpose to save their species from extinction, to go into planets, raid them, and take as many slaves as they possibly can to torture them for 1, 5, 10, 20, a million years, because that torture will keep them from dying. They look very BDSM style too. They definitely have a lot more spiky bits and they have a lot more of that kind of leathery black look to them. But example, let's say you are an upstanding Imperial citizen, living life on a regular planet. You get invaded by the Necrons.
Ooh.
The Necrons will shoot you with a deatomizer, and you will be destroyed in a millisecond, and that's it. Not the worst way to go. You are invaded by Chaos Marines or something. You take a bolter shot to the head or a chain sword across your stomach, and you get cut in half. Painful, but not the worst.
Yeah.
The Orcs arrive. They beat you to death. Hurts, but, you know, whatever. Tyranids, they eat you alive. It's pretty rough. The Dark Eldar. The Dark Eldar. This is going to get a little...
Bricky. That's awesome.
graphic. I apologize. You pray you die. You don't. You are instead taken as a human slave. Your life will be endless work and agony, 24/7. They will make sure you can't not die, as your pain satisfies them. They will hook you up to all manner of torture devices. They will inject pain-based stimuli drugs directly into your nervous system. They will slowly run razor blades across your skin. They will fillet you and pull out your teeth and your fingernails one by one. They will remove your appendages and your skin and wait for it to grow back so they can do it again. They will murder and torture and use the R word, it rhymes with grape, your entire family in front of you and do the exact same thing to them. You yourself will also be rhymes with grape anywhere and everywhere possible. And this will occur for 20 years until you are no longer satisfying to them. And then you will be contorted, crushed, and twisted into some form of trophy, a fleshy trophy, or a ring, or a couch, or a TV stand, or perhaps a wonderful hat, while you are, of course, still alive and breathing, and you will become a moaning, fleshy trophy for eternity. And that is what happens when you are taken by the Dark Eldar. They are the most depraved.
No, thank you. No, thank you. No, let the Necrons get me. Let them get me. No, thank you for the rest of it. No. Nope. Mm-mm. I don't want to be a lampshade. Or like a couch or something. That's wow. So this is new information to me. Knew about the Eldar. What the fuck, man? What the fuck? I didn't know that the Dark Eldar were even a thing, and they are. Whoa. I don't have words for how messed up all that is. I don't even know what to say.
Most horrifying race in all of 40k. They look the part, and they do it so they all don't die. They are literally forced to do this, because if they don't, Slaneesh's grip will get harder, and they will have their souls pulled away. So long as they keep doing this, Slaneesh is like, "You're doing good, man. You're doing solid. You keep that shit up, you elf-eared bastards." That's the Dark Eldar. That's the Drukhari. They are horrible. On the tabletop, they're actually kind of like Eldar, but more extreme. They are even squishier than the Eldar, but they hit generally even harder. Fast attacks, skirmishers, really quick, speedy, like get around them, do a lot of damage, get away kind of stuff. That's most of the Dark Eldar. Look up the definition of Grim Dark in a dictionary. You'll find a picture of the Dark Eldar. And Sev from Public Commando.
Yeah.
A quote from Mr. Vecht. "We are the lords of despair, masters of terror. Dread and agony are our meat and wine, and they are plentiful indeed." Dark Eldar.
Wow.
Talk about the Harlequins. Clowns.
What's the matter, Andy? Don't you want to have some fun?
The Harlequins are a bizarre race of Eldar. They're demonic clown performers. They're like a weird mix of Sander Cohen from BioShock and Jin from League of Legends, but in a more clown theme. They're artists of death and perfecters of their craft. They do not belong to Craftworlds or any of the weird Drukhari people. They guard something called the Black Library, which is this giant tome of never-ending knowledge deep in the heart of the Eldar webway, and also guarded by their god named Kegorok, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He is the laughing god, but it's the Eldar's laugh.
So, 4 chaos gods, and then there's a laughing god? Does the... I guess my question is does this laughing god know about the other gods? Is that a thing that they're fighting the same, or is it different? I'm confused. Somebody could explain in the comments. That'd be cool. Unless Bricky does it real quick.
Laughing god? And these are the Harlequins, the Harlequin clowns. These are Eldar clowns. Okay? So imagine the...
Why do the Eldar need to be clowns? I hate clowns. Why do they need to be clowns?
things that an Eldar, these depraved individuals, would find funny. And this is the god of that. It's a horror clown. These are gods of horror for us normal people. For them, they're like, oh, it's so funny. They're all dying horribly. Honk, honk. They're very bizarre and difficult to describe. They've escaped the ruinous powers of Slaneesh somehow, but their main thing is guarding that black library. And the Harlequins they're demon clown performers. They're barely any models on the tabletop. They're good in melee. They're demon clowns. I'm not sure. I got a quote. It is too easy for an Eldar to embrace the obscene virtues of chaos, for Slaneesh is nothing more than a manifestation of the Eldar mind in its most wild and unconstrained form. Human morality is meaningless to the Eldar, and to the dark side of the Eldar mind, all life is to be expended at a whim. Cruelty and generosity are but the impulse of a moment. Beauty and sensuality are virtues that can be expressed in bloodshed just as easily as in song. To an unfettered Eldar mind, there is neither sanity nor madness, but merely a wave of perfect existence fulfilled by its own savage momentum. They're very strange. Harlequins, Drukhari, Eldar, they are an anomaly that make humans seem completely easy to understand.
Yeah, let me just stay away from the Eldar. They all seem messed up. The clown ones are the worst.
Understand in comparison.
Okay, no, they're not the worst, but they are creepy.
They range from rekindling their civilization to horrifying murder and also clowns. They're all over the place, but honestly, they represent quite well and are rather interesting, especially with the whole Slaneesh murdering everyone bit. So, yeah.
Yeah, let Slaneesh have them. Please, let's just make that a thing that just happens.
Eldar. Now, bugs.
Ma, they following me, Ma. They following me.
The ball.
All right, we're gonna call it right there before we get into Tyranids. Again, if you could make sure that if you enjoyed this video to like it, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Comment below Let me know who's your favorite army so far. Have we even gotten to it? I don't know. You gotta let me know. Anyway, have a great day, wherever, or night, whenever you see this. Have a great time. And I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you.